Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to our webinar, From Prospect to Pipeline, using HubSpot AI to scale outreach without scaling headcount, hosted by Periti Digital and Eventus. We have a lot to cover today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. But I'd like to welcome everybody here and thank you very much for joining. So we'll quickly go into our agenda. Before I introduce our panelists, I just wanted to go over a quick few housekeeping items as well. For starters, the webinar is being recorded. And we'll follow up with a link to this recording in the next 24 hours. So if you have to leave a little early, no worries. We will be following up with the full webinar. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. You can direct any inquiries there. We're going to have a short Q&A session afterwards, and we'll be monitoring the chat just to make sure that we can get to as many questions as possible. So we are going to start off with welcome and introductions. That's what we're doing right now. We're going to dive into the panel discussion with our lovely panelists. That is going to be about a 25-minute discussion. And then we will dive right into our Q&A after that. We're hoping to have about 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions that the audience might have. So don't hold back, don't be shy. Feel free to put any questions you might have in that Q&A or in that chat, sorry. And then we'll wrap up at about 45 after the hour and get you all on your way. So thanks very much again for joining. And now we will jump into introductions. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. I'm very excited to introduce this panel. I might be a little bit biased, but I think these three are just such incredible, intelligent individuals and have so many great insights on this particular topic that we're talking about today. I can't wait for you to hear what they have to say. So for starters, I'd like to welcome one of Periti's favorite clients, Katie Pritchard, who is the head of marketing for Eventus.
Thank you
Katie
for
is
having
joining
me.
us today from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Brian Cronin, who actually recently relocated to Boston, Massachusetts in the US from Dublin. Brian, is that right? Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, so he came out to Boston to open Periti's first American office, which is very exciting. Brian is manager of HubSpot Consulting at Periti. Welcome, Brian. Oh, you're on mute, Brian, but that's okay.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, very happy to be here.
Yep, thank you for being here. And then next we have Diogo Cabral, Director of Professional Services from Periti Digital. Diogo's joining us from Lisbon, Portugal today. Good afternoon, Diogo.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Hello, thank you for being here. And then last, and arguably least, I'm Beth West. I'm the fractional CMO for Serco Advisors, or I should say I am a fractional CMO for Serco Advisors. I've been the acting CMO for Periti for the last 10 months. I've really enjoyed working with this team. They're an amazing group of people. And just to round out the scatter plot of our panelist locations, I'm joining you today from Houston, Texas in the US. So let's go ahead and get started with our panel. And Diogo, I think I'm gonna start with you. I was wondering if you could just give me a really quick overview of what Periti Digital does.
Yes, absolutely. If you think about CRM systems, whether they're called HubSpot or Dynamics or Salesforce or whatnot, they all help companies do three things in three areas, which are marketing, sales, and service. Right? They all have different strengths, different features, etc., but they all operate within this kind of broad scope. And conversely, these are things that any company, from a flower shop to a car dealership to a telco, all of them have these three functions, right? They all have marketing. Either it's just a pretty window with flowers and the odd flyer campaign for discounts, or it's a KPI driven, omni-channel, multi-everything campaign that the bank is doing. And conversely, for sales, you could say that the process is as simple as telling somebody how many times they have to water a plant and if they needs a lot of sunlight, all the way to taking people through interest rates and collecting their pay slips and all these things. And the same reasoning could be done for service. So CRMs, when they come out of the box, they have to cater for everything, right? All of these scenarios. And they come out of the box looking exactly the same, regardless of who purchased them, which kind of renders them a bit useless when they come out. And our work is to go sit with our clients, understand what they're about, what they do, how they work, what success looks like for them, and translate that into something that we can build using HubSpot and peripheral tools like Claude. We're using a ton of it now that fit in the user's day to day and help them construct meaningful processes that flow naturally and give companies the metrics that they need.
That's great. Thank you, Diogo. That's a really good way of explaining it. I don't know if you noticed, but you got a little bit of an applause from the audience when you said that sometimes out of the box renders the CRMs useless. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so switching over to you, Katie, can you give me a quick overview of what Eventus does so the audience can kind of better understand?
Sure. So at a high level, Eventus helps financial institutions make sense of what's really happening with their trading activity. So, and more importantly, really spot risk before it becomes a problem. And we do that through our Validus platform, which essentially monitors trading behavior across markets and asset classes to detect things like market abuse, manipulation, or anything that might raise regulatory concerns. And I would say what makes us a little bit different is we're actually founded by compliance practitioners. So the platform is very much built for people who use it day to day. It's designed to cut through noise, reduce false positives, and give teams much clearer, more actionable insights rather than just more alerts. And increasingly, we are layering in things like AI, and that's across the organization and not just in our go-to-market. So, for example, last year we launched Frank AI, which actually lets our users ask questions in plain English and instantly get answers from their data, which is pretty powerful in a space that's traditionally been quite manual. So ultimately, we help firms stay compliant, reduce risk, and actually get control and clarity over their surveillance programs.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Sounds like very important work. Thanks, Katie. All right, so I'm going to switch this back to Diogo. Diogo, can you give us a little bit of an overview about what the AI landscape is like in HubSpot today? We've heard so many different things from Breeze to the Claude connector to the Chat GPT deep research connector. Like what is this all about? What are some of their similarities and differences? Just in case, the audience is new to all of this, I'd like to kind of break it down for them.
Yeah, so there's like two categories to this. On the one side, we have HubSpot's Breeze, right? It's HubSpot's AI product. And Breeze is made up of two things. Breeze Assistant, which is your typical co-pilot app that lives inside the application. You can work with it in context of whatever it is you're doing in HubSpot. You can create things in HubSpot and leverage the data in all sorts of different ways, fully contextualized. Then Breeze also includes a number of agents that we'll go over in the next few minutes. We have customer agent, we have data agent, prospecting agent, all sorts of them that allow you to tackle families of tasks. But again, these live within HubSpot and allow you to interact with your customers and with your users from within HubSpot with the benefit of all your data and all your workflows, etc., in one place. Then on the other broad category, you have all your other large language models. I'm sorry. So that's Claude, that's ChatGPT, etc. And these can now connect into HubSpot via this thing called MCP. It's a big word, but what it means is you can connect large language models to all sorts of applications, HubSpot, as well as other applications within your ecosystem. So when you need to do a task or run an analysis that requires multiple data from multiple sources or to daisy chain actions across systems, etc., then you typically go for one of these, for Claude. And if you're within HubSpot, working with your data, working with your processes, then you normally go with Breeze agents. Beth, now you're on mute.
This always happens when you're live.
Yeah.
How about now? Are we good?
Loud and clear.
I can't believe I did that. Yep. Okay. Well, it just shows everybody that we're humans, right? That we still do these silly things on live webinars. Okay, so switching back to Katie, I keep hearing about AI agents, like they're all the rage right now. Everyone's talking about them. And I know that Breeze has a number of agents that are available, like Diogo just mentioned. Chief among them is Data Agent. I keep hearing about that one. And you and I have discussed offline, like how this particular agent has played a really big role in what you and your team implemented at Eventus. So could you just kind of quickly go into what some of your pain points were that you were experiencing before you implemented Data Agent, and what you were hoping Data Agent could help accomplish for you and your team?
Sure. So for us, it really came down to scale. We're a small team. We have really big growth plans, and we needed a way to grow pipeline without constantly adding headcount. The challenge we were faced with was around volume and processes. So we were generating a lot of leads through marketing, but those leads had to be manually reviewed for ICP fit, and then they had to be assigned to the right AE in the right region, based on things like region, company type, and a few other factors. And that created a huge bottleneck for us. Leads were sitting idle for too long, which meant that they weren't being followed up with quickly enough. And ultimately, we were losing momentum, with that handoff from marketing to sales. So even though we were putting a lot of effort into campaigns, not all of that effort and all of that demand was really converting into pipeline. Really, we were generating more leads than the team realistically had, the capacity to follow up with and process, which I know from a marketing standpoint is a terrible problem to have. But we really needed a way to better qualify the leads and, prioritize the right ones and really bridge that gap between marketing and sales. We actually started trying to solve this ourselves in the first half of 2025. We spent a lot of time actually building out our own AI-driven solutions to really help us with these challenges. And then we went to inbound later in the year, and HubSpot actually launched their native AI tools, and that included Data Agent. And that essentially gave us a much more scalable and integrated way to do what we had been trying to build. And honestly, you would think that initially we were sort of like, all of this work has gone to waste, we put all of this time and effort in, but actually all of that work we had done beforehand wasn't wasted at all. If anything, I would say it put us in a really, really strong position, because we already knew and understood our use cases. We knew what our pain points were. And as Diogo said in his opening, we knew what good looked like for us. So when Data Agent came along, we were able to move really quickly and start seeing value almost immediately. And I would say one of the core use cases for Eventus is really around our ICP matching. That's one of the main ways that we've used Data Agent to really optimize our lead generation and build our pipeline. The market that we operate in at Eventus is quite nuanced. There's a lot of gray area. So on paper, our target companies are banks, broker-dealers, exchanges, FCMs, regulators. But in reality, it's not always that simple. Sometimes a company might not look like a target at first glance, but when you really dig into how the company actually operates, they could actually be a really strong fit for us. And because of that, this used to be a really, really manual process. I would sit down week after week with our global head of sales and go through companies one by one just to decide whether they were a target or not, which obviously is not scalable. So what we've done now is we've actually built Data Agent to essentially mirror that decision-making process. It looks at a range of criteria, so things like the company's website, their activity, the roles that they have, the size of the organization, and it uses all of that to determine whether a company is a good fit for Eventus or not. And the way that we have built it is it categorizes the companies into 3 buckets. So there's yes, ICP, it's a match for Eventus. The second one is no, it's not a target. And then the third one is it needs review. And that's where we have a human in the loop. So if the agent is highly confident, it will automatically classify the company. If it's less certain, that's where we step in and review. And I would say that alone has removed what was a major bottleneck in our process. But we've actually taken it a step further than that. So once the company is qualified, Data Agent then goes and looks at the contact level. So things like job title, keywords, role relevance, and it actually determines whether the individual as well as the company is somebody that we should be targeting and we should be outreaching to. And if both the company and the contact meet our criteria, it will then automatically assign that lead to the most appropriate AE. And that's based on things like region, the company size, and the company firm type, which again was another manual step initially before we set all of this up. So what we have actually ended up with is a fully automated flow from qualification to categorization to assignment. And all of that feeds directly into our pipeline and workflows in real time. And I would say the impact is that we're able to follow up much faster. We're focusing only on our high quality leads and we're segmenting our data much, much more effectively. So I would say for us, Data Agent really acts as the foundation layer. You know, it ensures that everything downstream, whether that's prospecting, outreach, or reporting, is built on the right data. And then I think we'll probably touch on a little bit later. Once those leads are assigned, we then layer in things like Prospecting Agent to actually drive the outreach. So it all connects together into one continuous workflow. And what I will say, though, is we actually didn't really understand or really realize the value of Data Agent, I would say, until we really started trying to use the other agents. And Brian, you're probably best placed to give a bit more of an overview of Data Agent and what actually went into implementing it all at Eventus and how we really discovered the true value of Data Agent. So I'll hand over to you at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So I think just to recap, we have 3 paid agents in HubSpot at the moment: Prospecting Agent, Data Agent, and Customer Agent. I think Data Agent is probably the most slept on, right? When Katie and Eventus came to us, the Prospecting Agent was the most obvious use case for what you were looking to do. You were looking to scale outreach, basically. But without your data like correctly tagged and categorized, it's quite hard to enable the Prospecting Agent to work correctly. And we have a lot of customers that come to us and initially they're trying out the Prospecting Agent and it's not working super well for them, and it's because we're not prompting it correctly as well as giving it the right context from Data Agent. And so I guess, what is Data Agent in practical terms? Let me quickly switch tabs. So Data Agent is one of Breeze's proprietary agent tools, and it uses a combination of LLMs, which HubSpot has kind of handpicked here to give you the outputs that you need. So it'll take CRM data, it'll take context on the record like emails, notes, tasks, etc. And it will also take web research as well and combine it through these different LLMs in a way that gives you the output that you can then enrich on your property data. So I've prepared a couple of different examples of how it can be used. So most obvious use case is, a new field that we want to generate and ask a question of our data. so that we can segment and appropriately categorize it. So like Katie mentioned, a really powerful example here in the use case of Eventus was the suggested owner for the account, right? Because in the case of Eventus, we have quite complex like routing rules, which would be quite difficult to handle with a workflow. But we can now like shorten this down into one given prompt. And I've simplified this for the purposes of demonstration, but I've essentially said, okay, when the company is US based, assigned to Brian, UK based, assigned to Luke. So I can pick some sample companies here. And the really interesting thing about this is it will give you the source as well, right? It'll tell you the logic behind why it's assigning it to this given person. And I think that's useful when you know, especially in the case of owners and stuff like that, where you might have account conflicts as well. So this is one of the, you know, one of the key use cases that we worked on with Eventus, and replaces like a series of complex workflows that would have come before it. Another example, so a lot of companies obviously have existing categorizations for how they segment their data, right? So in this case, let's say we have a firm type field, and in that field we have 3 categories: digital assets, traditional finance, and other. And say you have, you know, half of your database is already categorized with this, but it's really difficult to, you know, enrich it with this, and normally you would need to export it and manually categorize or use some level of human judgment in order to fill this in. You can now prompt directly within the property. And again, I've simplified this for demonstration, but you might say classify as traditional finance, digital assets, or other, and it can fill that in for you. So on the one field, you can have a combination of data that you already have, as well as like AI generated data as well. And you'll be able to see then which came from AI, and you'll be able to get a clear source. So obviously McDonald's, you know, is not a financial services company.
I'm just going to jump in here and say this has been incredibly important for us segmenting, and I'll talk a little bit more a bit later. We have created different prospecting agents for different AEs based on different firm types and different asset classes. So this alone has been incredible for routing the leads into the right prospecting agent. Like, again, all of this was completely manual before Data Agent came into play.
The other example to touch on is the ICP use case that Katie mentioned. So again, Eventus has a pretty complex ICP, and the financial services industry is pretty complex. You could accidentally pick up on a company that you think is an ICP, but they might be a consultancy or a software provider or a broker that's not entirely relevant. So we had to come up with a fairly sophisticated prompt, and in this case, we're using the Breeze data agent action within a workflow, because similar to a custom code action in a workflow, you can define the outputs. So in this case, we have 3 separate outputs. We have confidence, if they're an ICP match, and the reasoning. And the reason we put it in these 3 different fields is because you know, the ICP, like, we don't want just the ICP match yes or no to be the determination of if this company is something that we want to pursue or not. You know, these are high value contacts, and we want to be really diligent about making sure that, you know, there's strong reasoning behind it, and that we're really confident in it. So we're trying to replicate.
Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I was just saying we're trying to replicate as close as possible the like process that a human would go through if they were scoring this account.
Yeah, and this has been, again, incredibly important, because that third bucket of needs review, I still review that on a weekly basis with our global head of sales, and it means that I can pull that up in one view, see the suggested response, so whether it thinks it could or isn't, but it needs a review because it's not 100% sure. But then it has a couple of lines on reasoning, and it means that we can read all of that in one view without having to go and search up a company's website to try and understand what they do. Breeze is actually putting that, in a couple of lines. It's distilling it down to one or two lines for us to be able to make a judgment call, which speeds up that manual process, which is amazing.
So again, we have these copied then to properties that Katie can then view quite easily. The advantage, so you can also use custom LLMs directly within these workflow actions. But when you handle it with Breeze, you know that it's gonna be pretty clear. They've handpicked these models to give the type of data outputs that we need for enriching CRM data. Whereas if you were to use a custom LLM, you'd have to do a good bit more configuration around temperature and reasoning and things like that. So it kind of takes all of that out of your hands, and you just need to worry about essentially budgeting for the credits to use the Breeze agents. So I think just to recap, essentially, Data Agent allows you to ask questions of your CRM data in a human formatted and natural way, as well as combining that with some web research, so that you can segment and tag your data in a much easier way. And this is kind of in the fuel to the fire to the other agents, including Prospecting Agent.
Wow. Thank you, Brian. I mean, it's just incredible, really, when you think about the strides that AI has helped teams make. Not only for sales and marketing directors and leaders, but also for the people out there on the front lines too, who are out there prospecting and doing, the daily grind of the work of reaching out to prospects as well. So thanks, Brian. That was amazing. So I want to come back to something you said, Brian, and you mentioned prospecting agent. And there are a bunch of different agents out there. So there's prospecting agent, there's buyer intent agent, I think. So a lot of different ones. And Katie, maybe you can weigh into a little bit about what are some other agents that helped Eventus with their sales and marketing processes besides just Data Agent? I know there were others as well.
Yeah. So as Brian's just shown, data agent really is the foundation. It's making sure that we're working with the right data and the right leads. And then the other agents are what actually drive the execution. So as you've probably guessed from this conversation, a big one for us is prospecting agent. So once data agent has, qualified and assigned a lead, the prospecting agent then takes over and generates personalized outreach emails. It's doing the research, it's drafting the emails, and all our sales team now have to do is actually go in, review, edit, and send. But what's really, really powerful is that it's not just a generic tool. It's actually learning from our reps. So as I mentioned just while Brian was doing the demo there, we have built tailored prospecting agents for each of our AEs. And that's based on their tone and voice, their personality, the way they typically do outreach. And every single time a rep edits an email or gives feedback, the agent is learning from that. So over time, it becomes more and more aligned with how that individual actually sells. And even going beyond that, it actually looks at timing, which is really important. So the agent will assess whether now is actually the right time to reach out to that person. And that's based on, what's happening with the company, recent activity, or the history of that contact, rather than just sending emails for the sake of it. So sometimes the agent will come back and say, it's not ready for outreach. And, that's an amazing thing for us to be able to see. And then because it's also connected to Data Agent, it's also pulling in all of our historical data. So if a contact has been in our pipeline before, if there was a closed won or a closed lost or a closed abandoned deal or any previous engagement, all of that context is taken into account. So the email that it generates is highly tailored to where that company or that contact actually is on its journey with us. So what you end up with is outreach that's not only personalized, but it's genuinely relevant for the person receiving it. So that's the prospecting agent. Another one I wanted to talk about is the deal loss agent that we started using. And that looks at all of our closed loss deals and identifies patterns around why we lost them, basically. And traditionally, that kind of win-loss analysis would take a lot of manual effort. I mean, we have teams that sit and review this stuff, but this agent can surface those insights almost immediately. And it means that we can then use those to refine our messaging and our strategy on both the sales and the marketing side. And then the final one I will talk about, and Brian, you can jump in if there's anything I'm missing here, is the buyer intent signals. So if a company is showing engagement, for example, they visit our website, we can automatically enroll that person into prospecting workflows. And that means that we're capturing opportunities that we probably would have missed before because that person isn't necessarily filling in a form or giving us their details, which is absolutely incredible because it's completely missed opportunities because we're not getting the details, but we can actually see that they're on our website, which is showing buyer intent. So that's another incredible one. So I think the way that, I think about it is data agent is structuring and qualifying the data, and then the other agents are really activating it. So you end up with this connected flow from data to assignment to outreach to insights, which gives us a much more automated end-to-end pipeline. And I would say what this really looks like in reality after one quarter, I did want to share some sort of stats because I know that's really important to show what the actual impact has been. And Brian, keep me honest here. Around 50% of our contacts in last quarter, so this year, have had sales activity, have had AI prospecting involved. So 50% of contacts that have had sales activity this year have had AI prospecting involved. That's insane. In March alone, we had 10 meetings booked through prospecting agent, and we're estimating around 5 hours per week of reps time saved. And I think that's actually being very conservative. So we are already seeing value from this program. And Brian, I'm not sure if there's anything I'm missing or you want to add. I know there are other agents. I'm not sure if you want to talk about any more of them.
Yeah. So I think the only other agent is customer agent. That's it's not super relevant for your specific use case, but it essentially allows you to use AI to handle incoming customer queries. So if you're getting a lot of inbound or website visits, the customer agent can really help educate buyers along that journey. But I think if I could give one point for the audience to take away from today, it's that data agent is underrated. And I think most companies that are coming to us that want to use the Breeze agents are starting with prospecting agent. It's where things are. It's the most obvious endpoint, but data agent is where we often have to begin. If we look
at the engine that's fueling, yeah.
If we look at Katie mentioned, there is an agent for each specific AE in Eventus. And so that means the emails are coming from their voice and their specific email. And therefore the contact owners for those people need to be really accurate, right? Otherwise it's going to send it from a different email address. So we needed essentially that suggested AI owner to be working properly from within data agent first. And we also, in order to get rep buy-in as well, we needed to only be enrolling contacts that were relevant. And, we relied on data agent heavily to get the right contacts into the prospecting agent.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. So interesting. And I'm floored by how much these amazing agents can do. But we're actually almost at the end of our panel discussion. I do have two quick questions that I want to ask because I think they're both very important things that the audience needs to hear about. But then we'll dive into our Q&A. We already have some great questions in there. I just another reminder to the audience that please get your questions in the public chat if you would like to ask anything of our panelists here. But quickly, Diogo, I was wondering if you could just go into, are there any security or compliance concerns that we need to be aware of when using Breeze agents? I mean, we're talking about very sensitive customer data here. So is there anything that might raise a red flag in
Yeah, I
terms of
mean,
security?
we get asked that a lot, and I wouldn't call them concerns, more like considerations. But first thing, Breeze assistants and agents, they run inside your HubSpot account. They can see your CRM data, files, etc., depending on what you allow, right? So that's very important. Data access is opt-in, and it's controlled by administrators. You can have a random user just opening the doors, and nothing's on by default. So you won't get in trouble by logging in. You have to explicitly allow HubSpot to use this data. Secondly, when you use Breeze, all of your prompts, and it's important to note that in this context, a prompt is not only what you type in, but also all the context data that HubSpot uses. All of that gets sent to the service providers, like Brian showed in that diagram, but that all stays within HubSpot's controlled infrastructure and their data agreements. So it's your data and it's not going out into the world. So,
Okay.
And
Perfect.
Thirdly,
oh, sorry.
There's a few guardrails. Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
you go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
No, I'm just one more. There's
Yes,
guardrails
yes.
on all of this. So before the system changes any data, you get to review it. You, as in a human, gets to review it and approve it. Again, Brian showed some of this, but this is all stuff that you can control. It doesn't just all of a sudden grow legs and goes wherever. So I think, security, compliance, they're not reasons not to use it, AI. They're reasons to use it properly, like we've just seen Eventus show us.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, that's good to know. That's definitely reassuring. And then, okay, our last question, I'm gonna lob over to Katie. If you could give any advice to the audience today, what advice might you have for people out there who are considering using Breeze agents in their HubSpot instance, like from your real world experience?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice that I'd give is to start with your use cases and not the technology. I think it's really easy to get caught up in all of the different AI tools and agents. But what actually made the biggest difference for us was taking that step back and really asking, where are our bottlenecks? And for us, as you can see, that was things like our ICP matching, our lead routing, and our outreach. And once we really understood those problems clearly, it became much easier for us to really apply data agent in a way that was actually delivering value. The second thing I would say, and I actually see a question in the chat about it, is your data quality and structure is everything. And Brian will know the amount of work that has gone into this, and actually, honestly, is still going into this. Data agent is incredibly powerful, but it works best whenever you have a solid foundation to build on. If your data isn't structured properly or your criteria isn't clearly defined, you will not get the full benefit. And I'd also say, don't expect perfect straight away. There's definitely an element of iteration. I would say we're still iterating today. Now, months after we started the work, we've spent time refining prompts, adjusting criteria, and continuously improving how the agents work. But that's all part of the process. And you do get better and better results every time. And then finally, and I would say most importantly, I would really, really recommend working with a strong HubSpot partner. We had a really clear idea of what we wanted to achieve, but actually connecting everything data agent, prospecting agent, the workflows, all of the moving parts, that is where the real complexity comes in. And working with Periti has made a huge difference for us in terms of speed and execution. It allowed us to get everything set up properly and really start seeing value much, much faster than if we tried to do it all ourselves. So overall, I think it's about, being clear on the problem that you're trying to solve, building a strong data foundation, and then layering in the technology in the right way with the right partner.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Katie. Brian, you have a fan in the chat, by the way. I don't know if you saw that. Work with Brian. He's the best. Okay, so we have a few minutes for Q&A. We've got some good questions here in our chat. And I'm just going to start with the one on the top and go down. Hello, does the data agent use website field to enrich the data, or can it use domain? Thank you. Who wants to tackle that one?
Yeah, Brian, do you want to take it?
Yeah, so it'll take the domain by default, but like we ran into this issue a couple of times, Katie, where it was like referring to the wrong field, and because you have access to a prompt and you can like guide the prompt, if it's taking it off the wrong field and researching off the wrong field, you can redirect it using your prompt. So it's at your discretion. You can insert any field from within your record to research from, but like it requires a bit of prompt engineering to make sure that you're getting the outputs that you need.
Yeah, it's back to that iteration I just talked about.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Katie, I know you touched on the internal data cleaning question, but did you have anything else you wanted to?
Loads and loads
Okay.
and loads.
Yes, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, we did tons of work on this. We used Apollo to really help clean our data. We cleared out loads of stuff that was dead data, things that were bouncing. We filled in missing job titles, broken emails, all of that sort of stuff. And to be honest, we're still doing it. It is taking a long time, but we have a huge database. So it depends on how big your data set is, I guess. But yeah, honestly, I would say the first, I don't know how many weeks, Brian, we literally were just spending time getting the data right. Because in my mind, there's no point in building all of the infrastructure on top of data that's not going to generate results for you. There's no point in sending prospecting emails to people who don't work at companies anymore. So that was a really, really important aspect of this project for us.
Yeah,
okay.
No, I would agree.
Great, thank you. And then a follow-up question from the same gentleman was, how much context engineering did you do to get the best results?
Again, I would say quite a bit. And yeah, I guess especially on the prospecting agent, when it's coming from people and they want it to sound like them, that's the one that needs the most tweaking. If you are working with data agent and it's more like a deterministic type workflow, it can be a little bit simpler. If you're just saying like the one that I used for demonstration purposes there, assign US to Brian, UK to Luke, that's going to be simple, and you don't need too much engineering in that case. But where you have complexity or where you want to refer to multiple fields, there definitely is a bit of tweaking that happens over time there.
What I would say is it's really important to get buy-in and participation from your sales team. If you're building out prospecting agents for them, you need their support to get them where they need to be. It is 100% a joint effort. You can only do so much from your side, and we have done a lot of work in the background to really get the agents where they need to be for each of our AEs, but they also need to meet you halfway, and they need to be engaging with it and giving feedback, editing the emails. As I said in one of my final questions there, it learns from our reps. So the more that they put into it, the more that they will get out of it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think anytime the sales and marketing teams are fully aligned, that is always a good thing. So that's great. Okay, we have one more question, and then we will wrap up. Can you give any insight on results you've seen from the prospecting agent? General reply or meeting rate, comparison to previous approach?
So I did just share a couple of stats. You maybe sent that before. I shared those at the end. So I would say about 50% of contacts this year that have had sales activity have had AI prospecting agent involved. And in March alone, so last month, the team booked 10 meetings on the back of the prospecting agent, and that's not including their own general outreach. That's literally just prospecting agent emails. And then what was the other stat that I shared, Brian?
Did you say the 10 meetings booked?
The time saved.
Oh, yeah.
Time saved.
So we're estimating, and I think this is massively conservative, probably about 5 hours per week per rep, on, them going and researching companies to generating emails and doing that outreach. All of that is done now for them. And, when we started this, they were having to make more edits because the agent was still learning. I would say now we have a good few reps that are literally just reading and clicking send. And I may add as well, you don't have to have a human in the loop for this. You can actually automate this where prospecting agent can just go and do all of this for you and send the emails on your behalf. It's important for us to have that final say and have a human in the loop, but that's not a necessary piece of the puzzle. So yeah, time saved is another huge one.
I think
That's incredible. Yeah.
The data that I would look at is like making sure that your reply or meeting rate hasn't dropped and that your overall volume has increased, basically, because the value of the tool is allowing you to be more productive with the same number of people, essentially. So, I wouldn't necessarily count on an increased reply or meeting rate because it's going to be this. We want it to essentially replicate the same type of outreach that people are doing already, but we just want it to be done at a higher volume using this kind of like a productivity tool.
Yeah, it should be that the emails are basically written by your reps. Like, it shouldn't look like it's an agent. It should just look like your reps are just on fire with their outreach.
Great. Okay. Thank you all so much. And thank you to the audience members who submitted questions. We really appreciate it. We have one final slide to share with you, and then we will send you on your way for the day. But we wanted to mention that Periti, on our website, peritidigital.com, we have a really cool tool. It is a AI credits calculator. And Brian, I was wondering if you could just maybe talk about it just for a second.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to AI credits in HubSpot, a lot of companies are struggling to figure out how much they should budget for it. And so we built this calculator. It's on our website that will help you figure out essentially the number of credits that you would need. And we can help you guys with this as well. This is something that we helped Eventus with in running a discovery to figure out, okay, for your goals, what level of investment do you need to make in HubSpot credits? And there's different prices for the different agents. We've got it built out here in a calculation.
And just very quickly, what I will say is this was incredibly valuable for us because I honestly did not have a clue whenever it came to credits how many we would need. So Periti did all of that analysis for me, which was amazing. And we have hit the nail on the head because we are using just exactly as many credits as we got. So they did a great job with that.
That's great. Okay, and for the audience, we do have a link in the chat to that calculator. So if you'd like to check it out, please do so. And then that is our webinar. So thank you so much again to our panelists. This was hugely informative and really eye-opening for me, and I've got to imagine for the audience too. And then thank you to our audience for joining. Please feel free to reach out to Periti or to Eventus. We have Eventus. Sorry, we have our links to our company web pages there for you if you need them. And we're sorry for keeping you a little bit over, but as you know, we're just very passionate about HubSpot and about the AI agents that it has. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.